Well, good afternoon, and it's always my pleasure to welcome back Ron Gibson. Ron, good day and welcome.
Well, thank you very kindly, Kathleen. It's always a pleasure to be on your program, and I hope what I have to share is of benefit and useful to the listeners out there, because it's a very important topic. You know, one of the things that I've learned in my life, Kathleen, a lot of people are not honest. And when you bring forth the truth of honesty and facts, we are therefore branded as the bad guy, you know, and that's always puzzled me, simply because the Bible says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." And I've lived by that code the better part of my life, and I don't plan on changing now. But there are a lot of people out there who don't like what I have to say, and I've come to the conclusion that's their problem, not mine. So,
Well, I well agree with you, and you know, I think that what's been quite beautiful in the last couple of years is just to see what causes and what brings about the alignment of people who are in integrity and those that aren't. And I must say that I think there are many people who are aligned and are in integrity and have strong morals. I also think that and know that there has been a concerted effort to sway and confuse and take people off and away from their own understanding or sense of integrity, because the very overlords who are running this show these last couple of years have no integrity, have no morals. And so I think you said just before we started this that you were seeing many more people, growing numbers of people becoming more aware, awakening to what is taking place. Is that not correct?
that is correct. You know, it's interesting, you know, in my Bible in Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And sometimes we look at an individual event or even a series of events and think, oh my God, that's catastrophic. But we don't wait and see for the full picture to unfold.
Right.
You know, and I'm just saying, this last election that we had and the incident on January 6th, and I could get into that full detail, I won't, but the point of it is that there's much good that's come out of that. And as I shared before, every individual in this country who is an American, a citizen of this country or whatever, had a right to storm that Capitol building. Where the criminality comes in is when you destroy public property. But the right to go in there and have our voices heard and stop the criminality that's going on, we have that right as Americans. And I'm not a bit afraid to stand up and take that stand. And
Right.
I'm just saying that, and because of that, people are beginning, and they've known for years and years that something was really dreadfully wrong, but they couldn't put their finger on it. Now the bubble has popped, if you please, and a lot of good things are coming out of it. So I get phone calls. I've been on my phone all morning long. I get email. I get 100, 150, 200 emails a day. I can't even keep up with it all. But the point that I'm trying to make, America is waking up. And boy, I tell you, the adversary better be careful, because when you wake a sleeping giant, as America is, they are a force to be reckoned with. And that's because of you and I and the people of this nation. So
That's very, very, very good. Yes. And, you know, I was just sharing with you a book that I've just recently begun reading called Hidden Government by John Craig Scott, written in 1954 about this very thing, not quite being able to put his finger on what it is, but he does disclose it and he does reveal it in a very succinct way. And
Yeah.
so we are just carrying forward all of this information. So Ron, today we were going to dig into a really juicy topic, and a topic that has much more bearing on our lives, and an amazing opportunity for us to learn about. And that is the role of the power of the sheriff within our own local municipalities, counties. And so if you could launch into that, I'm all ears, and I think everyone else listening will be thrilled to hear what this is all about.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. Our subject matter today, we got started on it 2 weeks ago. But the position of the sheriff is constitutional. And the sheriff title and authority go way back into Old English law. And very interesting subject. But I want to share with you kind of the proper parameters and authority and jurisdiction that the sheriff has available. Not all of them use it, and much of it is greatly abused, whether that's intentional or by ignorance or whatever the case is. I'd have to take that on a case-by-case basis. But first of all, the sheriff is our firewall between us and criminality, is supposed to be, and us and unlawful legislation that comes down from the state or from the county. And it also is our firewall against unjust and wrongful decisions by the courts. Everybody thinks that the court is the ultimate authority. The court is not the ultimate authority, when in fact it infringes upon our God-given rights and property. And so, having said that, the Constitution of the United States, under Article 6, as senators and representatives before mentioned are members of the several state legislature and executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by their oath of affirmation to support this Constitution. Sheriffs are judicial officers. Did you notice that they are judicial officers? They are not law enforcement officers. The title has been changed. If you remember, years ago when we were kids, and even 20, 25 years ago, they were called peace officers. That is the primary role of the sheriff, is to maintain peace amongst we the people and among the people and the agencies of government, because there's a lot of wrongs that have been perpetrated on we the people with no protective firewall, that being the sheriff, of which to aid us or to stop the wrong that's been or being perpetrated on us. Let me read to you the sheriff's oath. I hereby solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution for the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, so help me God. Now think about that a minute. I hereby do. In other words, there's a commitment here, solemnly swear. That is an oath given by the individual that they will support and defend the Constitution for the United States of America against all enemies. Listen to this: foreign and domestic, wrongful acts of a court is the form of a domestic, and I'm going to call it what it is. It's a domestic terrorist, simply because anything that's violated as far as your God-given rights or your constitutional protected rights is an infringement upon our rights. And we as people and as creatures creatures of God, created by God, we have rights. And those rights by God's own word is to be protected. So there's an awesome responsibility in this position called the sheriff's office. Do not be deceived. The law is not complex. And I want to stop there a minute. One of the things that people have a very wrong understanding, the purpose of laws is not so much do's and don'ts, although that is a part of it. The purpose of law is to bring peace, and to maintain peace. And a lot of people think it's an action here and we sue them there and we arrest them over here, we prosecute them there. That's really on the fringes of the purpose of what the law is intended to do. Because when you have people with a moral conscience, the law then sets the boundaries of which we in good conscience are not to trespass upon that. And so what we have today is that we have agencies and we have persons and we have agents of government, and government itself is trespassing upon our God-given rights. And there's a great deal of, in my opinion, of misunderstanding about that. So, but let me go on. Do not be deceived. The law is not complex. Thomas Jefferson said, common sense is the foundation of all authority. Now, boy, that's a profound statement of the laws themselves and of their constitution. The laws of the land consist of, number one, the Constitution written by we the people under the authority of Almighty God to empower, control, and restrict government servants. Did you catch that? To restrict government servants. Number two, common law, which is written by God in the hearts of men, and the Constitution statutes, which are written by legislator. Any statute or code outside of this foresaid, and there are many, is null and void on their face. And that is why we need a constitutional law protector, better known as the sheriff, the county sheriff. If a sheriff must depend upon a lawyer to determine the law, it is no different than giving he or she your badge. My notes here. And the responsibility of your oath. What is not honoring, that is not honoring your oath. Lawyers already run our government and have the people ratcheted down in an unconstitutional codes and statutes, and in legal warrants therein is the problem in a nutshell, and the reason why we need a sheriff who knows the law. Now, I want to share something here before we go on. I have found in my circle, and I have a pretty broad circle, that a great number of sheriffs do not know the law. Somebody, the county council has told them what the statutes and codes are. The attorneys tell them what their opinion is, but neither one of them know the law, because attorneys even don't deal in law. They deal in statutes and codes. Statutes and codes are not law, folks. They are corporate rules and regulations. So if you think this is a law or that's a law, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. But I can tell you, as a matter of fact, and in 50 years in constitutional law, statutes and codes are not law. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. And especially people in law enforcement and attorneys and judges, et cetera, lawyers and I shouldn't say lawyers there because that's a misnomer. Attorneys rejected the counsel of God in Luke 7:30, the Bible says. The attorney said unto Jesus, Master, this saying, thou reproach us also. And Jesus said, woe to you also, and to you attorneys, for you load men and break their backs with grievances to the bone. That's kind of interesting. That's a pretty heavy load, isn't it? So in order for statute to become law, the legislator must first be given authority by we the people, by which is found under Article 1, Section 8. Now I want to stop there a moment. When has any legislator let you know about what law that they're going to pass? Now, let me tell you the problem with this, folks. That's why all of the statutes and codes in every state have the letter R in it. Revised statute, ORS is in Oregon, Oregon Revised Statute. Let me tell you what happens. Maybe I shared this before, but when the legislature passes an enactment, then in essence, before it's signed by the governor, it is sent to a 3-panel attorneys who review that and see if it is not in fact for the benefit of the state, not to the benefit of you and I or we the people. So they change the punctuation, they rearrange the words or whatever to make it fit for their purpose of the Bar Association for the benefit of the state. Now, I've had a lot of criticism because I bring that fact up. Otherwise, why would it be a revised statute? If the legislature makes an enactment, then why isn't it Oregon codes and statutes? But every state you look and they're listed as revised. Every state does it. And therefore we get something that our elected officials never really intended to pass that in the context that it is now written. Does that make any sense here?
Well, it does. So what you're saying, it's a little bit like a federal election, is it not? And then you have a group after the election numbers are in, and then you have a small group of folks who go over those numbers and decide who actually is going to be the true president of the United States of America.
Well, it's kind of funny you bring that up. I read one time, and I don't remember who quoted this, but it said, I care not how many votes that are cast. What is important is who counts the votes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I think that kind of says it all in its own right. I mean.
It does. So Ron, I want to ask you this. When you say that, there are all these powers for the sheriffs, but if they're not aware of their power, then how does one go about utilizing one's authority, protective measures of a sheriff?
Well, sheriffs, first of all, you have to remember they're human beings. They walk, breathe, talk, eat, sleep, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that we're working hard here where in my part of the country is and I've been trying to be instrumental in advancing this, and there are others, not just me, but having classes to teach sheriffs what their official duty is. And you notice I use the word duty.
Mm-hmm.
The job is secondary. It is always secondary to the duty. And the duty is to perform what they are required to do and gave their oath to do. And so I'm going to tell you a little story. You know me, I kind of like stories, kind of Jesus taught in what's called word parable that paint a picture. We contacted 11 different county sheriffs to come and let us teach them about the power of the sheriff. 11 different sheriffs, covers over a third of the state of Oregon. And as a result of that, not one single sheriff's office responded to say, yes, I will come and participate.
Wow.
So what we did is that we had a meeting here a month and a half ago, whatever, with our local sheriff, and addressed this fact that we're looking at him and we're going to hold his feet to the fire about things that he is obligated to address. And a number of things came up. I won't get into them at this point in time. But let me give you an example. We have election time, we elect the sheriff, and we elect him with, if I can use the illustration, a constitutional hat. Okay? So he gets, when his term is to start, he takes his oath, as I read to you what his oath is to consist of. And then when he enters his office, he takes that constitutional hat off and puts an administrative procedures hat on. They are diabolically opposed in concept and in purpose of a constitutional sheriff and an administrative sheriff. An administrative sheriff, for all intents and purposes relative to law, has no power at all other than a figurehead, because he's been dictated by either the courts or by the Bar Association or by the state legislative enactments that come down. And therefore, he's just a servant to those that master him. And we, the people, lose our firewall of our protected of that. And let me give you a prime example. And I'm going to get into this in a little bit, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of my position here.
I apologize for for opening that up. So please go back.
No, that's fine. But one of the things that is dreadfully wrong with our judicial system in this country is that the prosecutor is the one that has access to the grand jury. That should never be. The one who should have access to the grand jury should be the sheriff. And there's a number of reasons for that. The prosecutor is looking at one thing only, and that is, how can I get a conviction in this particular situation? Now, that's one of the problems with our legal system today. Years ago, when we had lawyers and not attorneys, both the prosecutor in that particular instance and the defense lawyer sought the same thing, and that was for the truth and the facts of the given case. Now, the prosecutor is one who only wants a conviction, and the attorney is want to get him off. Nobody wants to address the truth. So you've got this battle going on. One is his whole goal and mandate is for prosecution, and the other one is for a fee. I'll see if I can get you off. And the truth is lost in all of that transaction, if you hear what I'm saying.
I do.
And you can never have true justice if you have that kind of a setting, because the truth never really comes out. So when you have a sheriff that goes to the grand jury, he has the investigative facts, and he has no partiality in that particular case, or at least should not and is not supposed to where the prosecutor is partial and prejudiced to the facts in a case, because in many instances you've heard of cases where the prosecutor has not revealed to the grand jury all of the facts relative to a case. And that's a dangerous, dangerous situation, folks, because a lot of people think, well, that's okay, it's somebody else. Well, what if you are now the accused? What if you are now the victim or a victim or whatever term that you want to put on it? So we need to be real careful, folks, what we allow here. And that's why making your county sheriff accountable But to do that, you better know what you're talking about. And I don't mean you have to have a law degree of which to do that. That means that you need to understand what law is and when to recognize what things are going on that are not within the boundaries of law. Because law is to bring protection and peace. And when you have this chaos, like we have in our judicial system here, there's no justice anywhere. And in fact, Habakkuk in the 5th book from the end of the Old Testament went to God and complained. And he said, God, he said, I don't understand why you're allowing all of this wrong to proceed. He said, everywhere I look, there is bribery and oppression, and there is no justice in the courts. Well, it's like picking up today's newspaper, if I can put it in that context. So once the sheriff is in his rightful position as far as his authority and jurisdiction, you will see a tremendous difference about how justice is to be carried out. Because not only is justice to be carried out, there is also in his position to protect the innocent in this process. And
Ron, I have a question for you here. So when you use the word, once the sheriff is in the rightful jurisdiction, so you're referring to constitutional jurisdiction, but how does that actually get claimed? How does that, because we're talking about maritime law, contract law, that the so-called legal system of courts and bar attorneys and the legislature work in, or at least bar attorneys and courts. But how does an actual sheriff claim that rightful jurisdiction of constitutional jurisdiction?
he does that by the very fact that he was elected as a constitutional sheriff. That's part of the power that he has. He can tell the judge, I'm not going to enforce this judgment from the court if in fact it's unconstitutional, if in fact it infringes upon God-given and protected rights or constitutional protected right. The Constitution doesn't provide rights. It is only there for the protection of God-given rights. And people don't understand that. And it's really important that you do understand that. And therefore the sheriff, by the power of the sheriff, which is elected constitutionally, can exercise that power and should exercise that power.
So how, okay.
Does
so
that
then,
answer your question?
well, it does very clearly. I mean, it is so simple. But then let's say a court attempts to enforce a judgment that does not uphold one's constitutional rights, and the sheriff doesn't work on your side, but supports the side of the court. What are we just left out to dry?
Yeah, that's the bottom line. That's what we're talking about here. You have no firewall. In other words, no protection between you and your given situation or unlawful legislation that should be stopped by the power that we entrust that power to be and the authority. So we have more people in jail per capita than any nation on earth. Unbelievable. We have more attorneys than any country on earth. And it's because of the statutes and code and this administrative process. The administrative process is not our friend, folks. And there are people out there arguing that, oh, well, this works great. Well, I've been in law for 50 years. I haven't seen it work great at all. Because when you substitute constitutional protected rights and property for statutes and codes, you now have severed every bit of right and property right that we have that's God-given. I want you to think about what I just said. It segregates that whole God-given rights and property. When I do seminars on land patents, I have a document, it's called Forever. And I don't know if I've read that on your program. And so But the point being is that your right of land ownership and your rights relative to land and God-given rights are to be protected at all costs. Did you hear what I said? At all costs. Because if you don't, then in essence, we end up with what we have and you have no rights. I want to give you another example, Kathleen. If you have a question, feel free to ask it here in a moment. But I want to address the issue of foreclosures, both the mortgage foreclosures and tax foreclosures. There is absolutely no reason that a sheriff should ever aid in the fact of selling a person's property on the courthouse steps for the benefit of the financial banks and mortgage companies, whatever you want to call it, simply because those loans are all fraudulent, and I can prove it, and I have proved it. Simply because for there to be a foreclosure, there has to be a title. The banks don't have a title. They have never had a title. The title is in the patent document. And under patent law, if you have a warranty deed, you can bring that forever benefit forward. And therefore you cannot be foreclosed on. There's no liens that can be attached to your property. You cannot be evicted off your property. I got all the court cases. I got all that stuff. So let's go to the tax foreclosure. First of all, patents were never to be. In fact, I have a document right here on my desk that addresses that issue. That patents were never to be taxed. So to get around that, after the Administrative Procedures Act was enacted in June 11, 1946, then in essence, they changed the definition, the legal definition. They changed from lawful to legal. Do you know what the definition of legal is? It's to circumvent the law of God. That's the definition of legal, okay? Then they changed the definition of land to real estate. Well, there's a maximum in law that's universal. One can only claim jurisdiction over that which one creates. So they create a new legal system rather than a lawful system, and they create a new definition for land to real estate. Therefore, we created it, so now we have jurisdiction over it. So by doing so, then the element of a requirement of a title to your land there in the bank, then now they just do it on the basis of a phony contract that's no contract at all, because all the relative parties didn't sign it. And I could go on, but I'm sure.
Well, and what we hear with this and what you're saying is that words matter. In fact, this whole so-called legal system is all based upon the trickery of shifting the meaning away from lawful language into their unlawful jurisdiction, using language that the common person man and woman does not pay attention to until they are removed from their land. There's a foreclosure or whatever happens, and then we become very, very aware.
I have seen sheriff's departments all over the Western United States that I have been asked to assist in there. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to know the law, but literally kick entire families out boldly out of their home with young children. No place to go, no place to take a bath, no place to eat, etc., etc. But that brings up a step further that I want to address, so that I hope I drive this thing home. And that is the fact that the banks have no lawful claim to your equity that you have in a home when they do a foreclosure. The reason that they don't is because they never put up any money to buy the home to start with. That's your promissory note that gets that accomplished, either directly by cashing it as a check or as monetizing, securitizing, and then send it to Wall Street. But that money never comes out of a mortgage company's account, nor a bank account, or whatever on the thing. Now, let's go to the tax foreclosure. The tax foreclosure in its whole existence is a violation of constitutional protected rights under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. And it's the first thing listed, and it says in there that the states are forbidden from legislating. Number one is a bill of attainder. That's ATTAIND as in David, ER. A bill of attainder means that they are the accusers, they're the arresting officer, and you can be arrested by paperwork. I don't mean just the physical. And they are the judge and the jury, and they're the executioner. So that you have no line of defense through a jury trial to see whether in fact that county has the right to do a tax foreclosure. Okay? So now here's the issue. They then take your equity and then they take the money out of that. And if there's no claim to it, then many of the counties keep it. What happens to your equity in that property when they do a tax foreclosure? And that's under the fraud statute, folks, and it's called unjust enrichment. They have no lawful authority to claim because they have nothing invested. The county has nothing invested in your property either, just like the mortgage companies do not have. And so these are the things that the sheriff is to protect us from. Instead, they're an accessory to the fact by conducting the sale on the courthouse steps unlawfully, because you have not been able to give an opportunity with a jury trial to determine whether in fact they can come and take your home. Now, I'm telling you folks, this is happening and has been happening all over this nation. And because of the tax thing, you become a slave to the county. That lady called me the other day, I say the other day, probably 2 months ago. She lives in New Jersey. And she said 10 years ago, her property was, the tax assessment was $8,000 and some change. She just got her tax bill for this up and coming year, and the bill was over $88,000. From $8,000 to $88,000. Now that's an unjust enrichment because the land value, and it can't be an ad valorem taxed upon property anyway. It's unlawful, but it's legal. And that's the difference. And here again, the sheriff should be the one to step in to put a stop to that. And so there are many, many reasons why we need to make our sheriffs accountable. But we also need to let him know that we support him if he's doing his lawful duty. And I have law enforcement people tell me, well, I'm just doing my job. And my immediate response is, I don't care about your job. What I care about is your duty. When you're duty bound, when you take that oath, then in essence, you are swearing before Almighty God. And trust me, folks, he's listening and he remembers. So anyway, Kathleen, did you have a question?
Well, I mean, the deck of cards seems to be really stacked against us today.
It is.
And then and the likelihood of finding a constitutional sheriff in our community is it's rare. So what do we do? I mean,
Kathleen, stop there. You ask a very profound question, and I'll tell you where the error is. That we, the people who vote for whomever our sheriff is, are not doing our homework. We need to have interviews with that candidate for sheriff and to make sure that if he takes that oath, that he's going to uphold the oath. I like the looks of him. Well, he worked for the police department, so he'll be good sheriff. That's the mentality of most people when they elect the sheriff. And then they wonder why when they get behind on their payment or the taxes are not paid, he's standing at the courthouse selling your property. There's a scripture in my Bible that says you reap what you sow. And when you sow bad seed, you're going to get bad fruit. So I say that in all due respect. But the very fact, and the same thing with our state elected people, the same thing with our federal elected people, we elect people for the wrong reasons. And what I use in my term is the wrong measuring stick. Our measuring stick should be the Bible. The Bible says anyone that put in a position of leadership is to have a servant's heart. That's the number one priority. And our sheriff is no different. When we elect a sheriff, does he have a servant's heart, or is he a slave to his master now that the system?
So Ron, what is our recourse here? I mean, so let's say you call the sheriff's department and let's say the undersheriff says, well, I'll get back to you. I'll talk to that police officer and I'll get back to you. And they don't. And so you call and they're there, but the secretary has many excuses and the excuses go on day in, day out. What does one do under those circumstances? Because obviously they're not duty bound.
Well, they are duty bound, but they're not fulfilling their duty.
Right.
That's the difference, okay? I just wanted to clarify that. But what you do is you start getting people together who are like-minded that want to have a protective barrier between us and the rest of this unlawful undertakings that is being perpetrated upon us. And then you get groups of people that then in essence come to the sheriff. If you come on a one-on-one, normally that's not very effective, unfortunately, because it should be. But when you start getting a large mass of people that he knows that all of these people got their eye on me and they're watching what I'm doing, and I've seen it happen, it starts to make a change. But it can't stop there. You got to keep and make sure. And every time the sheriff does something right or correct or lawful, then let him know that. The group of people that's keeping his feet to the fire, let him know, well, we appreciate what you're doing. Because now he knows that he has backing of the people. And that makes his job a whole lot easier.
Okay.
You know, no one likes to stand alone and fight a battle. There's an old saying, isn't it wonderful to have encouragement with skin on it? Well, we, the people, got skin on our body, and we talk and we walk and whatever. Let that sheriff know that we're going to support you to the hilt, but we expect the best from you, not just the good thing, but the best things.
Okay, that makes sense. So in other words, what you're saying is, if we don't invest our time to participate and ensure that our own lawful rights are being upheld, they won't be.
You just nailed it right there. We have to invest something, folks, to get something beneficial back. And this mentality that we have adopted in this country is killing us from within. Let somebody else do the dirty work. Let somebody else, sacrifice. But I want the benefit. Give me. That's a terrible mindset and a heart set to have, because we are neglecting, and we're going to stand before Almighty God one day, according to my Bible, and give an account with what he gave us. And God gave us a voice, he gave us ears, he gave us a mouth to speak, legs to walk, and a mind to think. And we need to utilize that for the benefit of all, not just the benefit of me. You know, we have too much of this me stuff. Now we're I stuff. We live in a community in this world, and we better figure out how to make it work. And God has given us that plan. but we're not paying attention for the most part. Okay,
We have about 10 minutes more, Ron, so
okay.
yeah, just for your benefit of your points.
As I mentioned to you there before, for statutes to become law, the legislature must first be given authority by we the people. And I kind of got off track there. A lot of this stuff, they make laws at the county level and at the state level that we don't give them authority to do. They just do it and it shows up, and now we're supposed to like it or lump it. And that's not the way it's supposed to be handled. The statutes that violate Section 9 of the Bill of Rights. And I want to encourage you folks, a little assignment. Go look up the Bill of Rights and read them carefully, and remember what it says. You'll find a major awakening in that Bill of Rights because it's God inspired. The following: the general rule of the United States Supreme Court is to be applied herein is the power of the county sheriff. The general rule is that an unconstitutional statute, though having the form and name of law, is in reality no law, but is wholly void with ineffective for any purpose, since it is unconstitutionally dates from the time of its enactment. In other words, what they're saying, folks, if there's any enactment by your county elected officials or your state elected officials that is in violation of the constitutional protected rights, your inalienable rights, it's null and void on its face. And we have a mass of ignorant to the facts, I'm going to use the word, of the very fact that you better know what your rights are in order for you to put a stop to this kind of stuff. Because if you don't, then in essence, you're going to become a victim, whether you like it or not. And when you become a victim, then it's easier for them to keep picking, and just like Kathleen, what you've been doing through, they'll throw everything including the kitchen sink. I've been involved in cases to where 3 or 4 attorneys have filed, 5 or 6 briefs at a time or responses or whatever, hoping that will default on the answering. And that's the tricks that they play. So all I'm trying to share here with you folks is that it's really important that we know what our Constitution protected rights are, because they are to be protected. And so as a result of that, no one is bound to obey an unconstitutional law, and no court is bound to enforce it. And you can find that in Bonnet versus Valerie.
Wait, which one is that, Ron? Could you repeat that?
Yes, the court case is Bonnet, B-O-N-E-T-T versus Vallier, V-A-L-L-I-E-R. And the other one is Norton versus Shelby County. Very good cases. Do you want the citations?
Please.
Yeah, on Bonnet versus Valerie, 116, capital N period, capital W period, 885, comma, 136, Wisconsin case, 193. It's a 1908 case. And the Shelby versus, or Norton versus Shelby County is 118 US. That means it's a United States Supreme Court case, 425 in 1886. Those still stand today, folks, because they've never been repealed.
Wow.
Never been repealed. In fact, the Supreme Court in numerous cases have referred to the Norton versus Shelby County case. And so pretty interesting stuff. Okay. Show us the county sheriff does not know the law, and we will show you a lawless county. Because in the nature of unrestrained government, servants to seize more and more and more power and control over we the people. And this is precisely why we need a true lawman who takes pride in the knowledge of the law. The office of the sheriff is not blindly enforcing code, rules, and statute, but to enforce the law and constitutional statutes that prevent lawless servants from injuring we the people. It is upon the sheriff to bind the government service down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. Wow. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects whatever was and never will be. Thomas Jefferson. So says a lot, doesn't it?
It does, and we have been lax. We have truly been unaware of our individual power, really. I mean, isn't that what this is? We have been for decades and decades, we have been listening or looking or being exposed to propaganda and lies that have really shifted us away from our self-determination, our self-empowerment. And because everything that you're talking about here is based upon our God-given rights, on our birthrights, on our sovereignty. And government has crept in and created their illegal or unlawful, well, legal statutes and codes, but they have nothing to do with our own sovereign rights. That's correct, is that not?
Well, and that is correct. And the one thing that I think is important for people to remember, and that is the fact that if you're going to allow yourself to be a victim, you will be a victim. And you will continue to be a victim until you take a stand. It's kind of like a bully on the schoolyard there in the playground. You know, he bullies people until somebody socks him in the nose and bloodies his nose, and he will stop being a bully to that person. And that's kind of the principle here. Folks, the first three words of our Constitution, we the people. I don't know if you recognize the power of that, because those three words made us kings of our land. Okay? Kings of our land. And as sovereign creation by God himself, we are sovereign because we're created by God. We have tremendous power. Now that power needs to be used properly and constructively and in accordance with God's will. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that you have choices. You and I, we have choices. And what we choose, there is always a cause and effect to our choice. And we're talking about the power of the sheriff, an election of a sheriff, and what the sheriff is supposed to do. He's only going to do what he is allowed to do. And if he's allowed to do it by the establishment and we put up no rebuttal and no resistance to that, then we're going to continue to be a victim. If we stand up as we the people, I'm telling you, that sheriff will have to yield just because of the power that God gave us as we the people, that's guaranteed in our Constitution. And so I hope and pray that this is a start. We're going to have a couple of other classes on there's so much to this, but there are other subjects that we'd like to cover as well. But I hope you're beginning to see the point about how important the sheriff's, the office of the sheriff and what it represents and the power that is entrusted. It's an entrustment, folks, that is given to the office of the sheriff, and the man who stands in that, or woman who is entrusted with that awesome responsibility, but an awesome privilege, because now they can serve the people in a constructive way. And you know, I don't know, I marvel sometimes at the blessings that God has given us, and sheriff is one of them. But we have a responsibility here too. So it's your choice. It's my choice. It's our choice.
Very fine. Well, thank you for, again, an enlightening and educational opportunity to become educated and empowered, and so that we can take and take action and see change that will truly.
Well, thanks again for allowing me to be a part of your program here today. And I want to wish all of your listeners and you and your family, Kathleen, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And just want the best for all of you, because we're in it together, folks. So let's work together. Let's stand shoulder to shoulder and let the bureaucracy know that we're done with the bullshit. Plain and simple.
Well, Merry Christmas to you too, Ron, and
Thank you.
See you in a few weeks, and Happy New Year.
Thank you kindly. We'll see you folks later. Bye-bye.